I'm still on this metaphors of space line of thought, if that's the right word. And what occurs to me, I suppose, it should have occurred to me ages ago. What's just occurred to me looking around at these trees here is about the inevitability of spatial metaphors, I suppose. I got to thinking, I suppose, because I'm kind of cherry picking the examples, Kierkegaard, Teilhard de Chardin, Newton, a whole range of sources in order to find examples of spatial metaphors. And in a sense I am kind of ignoring or not exploring other potential metaphors of knowledge. I am kind of wondering what I'm doing with that. And what prompted it, I'm looking at this tree and I'm reminded of the tree of knowledge metaphor that you find in, for example, the encyclopedia that was produced during the Enlightenment in France. I can't remember what it was called now, but it's the frontispiece, or one of the early pages, is this fantastic drawing of this tree in which all the branches of knowledge, and there's that term branch, is indicated. And of course there's a tree of knowledge that features in the Genesis story, and so on. So, whilst I'm talking about knowledge space, part of me is also thinking, well, maybe I should be talking about trees of knowledge. Space of knowledge is the wrong thing. But I guess what's just occurred to me really is that a tree, in a sense, is just a particular kind of organisation of space. We do sort of habitually think, or at least I habitually think, that space is this empty stuff, and this empty stuff is sort of punctuated with these objects, like these trees, and like my dogs, and the houses over here, and the cars, and so on. So these objects are kind of, well, they don't jump out at me as being spatial, which I think the space is the stuff that begins at the surface of one object and starts and ends at the surface of the next. But that's not what space is it? I mean, space goes right through these objects, and right through me, and is continuous through my dogs, and through the trees, and the cars, and the houses, and the earth under my feet, and all those kind of things. So a tree is spatial, and it's organised in space. So if I was to decide to take upon myself to talk about trees of knowledge, I would really be talking about a particular configuration of space. Because presumably I wouldn't be talking about the nature of the bark or the cells or but it's unlikely I'd be talking in those sort of terms. The major entailment I would be taking away from the tree as part of that, in order to structure my thinking as part of that metaphor, would be its shape, and its shape is spatial. Its shape is determined by the geometry and the size and the scale of the space it occupies. So even if I was to adopt a tree metaphor for a while, it would, to a very significant degree, still be a spatial metaphor. The fact that I'm not using that, I'm using this space, this other space, that is phenomenological space, or phenomenal space, is essentially no different. The space that I occupy right now is highly structured, certainly as structured as a tree. It's structured, phenomenally at least, by things like perspective, and like gravity, by gravity that says this space isn't neutral, something is happening to it. It's structured by the two-dimensionality of the plane on which I'm walking, and it's structured by the apparent arc of sky above my head, even though I know those things aren't part of a sort of mathematical Newtonian Cartesian superstring or whatever understanding of space. Those are absolutely the determinants of the phenomenological experience of space that I'm having. So it's a highly structured space that I'm walking around in, certainly as structured as a tree or as any other metaphor. So the structure of this space is what I'm interested in. And rather than use possible entailments to do with branching nests, or to do with roots, or to do with leaves, or to do with fractal design within the twigs that come off it, anything like that. Well, I could. I'm using the entailments of this spatial metaphor, this particular piece of space, phenomenal space that diminishes with distance, in which objects diminish in size with distance, space which contains an horizon, space in which distant objects get smaller and perhaps converge, space in which near objects occlude objects behind them, space which I can see more of if I rise up in the air, space which I can see less of if I sink down to the ground, space which changes its fundamental nature when it gets within within reach of my hands. It becomes tactile, and so on. So this is just a note to self, really, I suppose. But when I'm talking about space as a metaphor, I'm not talking about unstructured emptiness. I'm talking about the phenomena of space, possibly the poetics of space, like a misquote Bachelard, and to the extent that I talk about trees, they may be part of what I'm talking about, but they are also space, organised in a different way. This space is full of the sounds of the motorway. I wish it wasn't. There you go.